Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point, AFR Talk. Just got to get this one email off. Let me shoot that off. There we go. All done. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point. The network is the American Family Radio Talk Network. And back to this issue about taking care of the poor. You look at, I believe that what conservatives want is we care for the poor. We love the poor. We believe in their capacity to take care of themselves. We look at the poor who are addicted to government handouts, and we say this is terrible, the way it diminishes their humanity. It just breaks my heart to see that. I mean, and you look at it, you've probably seen people that are completely dependent on government handouts, and it breaks your heart to look at that lifestyle. I mean, it just something inside you just weeps when you see that, the wasted opportunity and just some of the qualities of character that are encouraged and enabled by government dependence. And we believe that poor people are made in the image of God. They don't have to stay poor. We believe that they can be expected to assume responsibility for their lives. And therefore, what we want to do is we want to create an economy which is growing so new jobs are available, higher wages are available, better jobs are available all the time, so that anybody who is willing to apply himself to work hard is going to have a shot at climbing the ladder of success. And this is another reason why we do not like welfare programs. Number one, welfare programs are unconstitutional. In fact, I've even written this in the flyleaf of my Bible because it's a very, very important principle. This is James Madison in 1794. Our first objection to welfare programs is there's no authorization for them in the Constitution. They're flatly unconstitutional. Article 1, Section 8 doesn't give Congress any authority to start welfare programs at all. Now, it doesn't prohibit the states from doing it, but that was to be a state issue. If states wanted to run welfare programs that drove them into the poorhouse, then that would be up to the states. But the federal government has no authority morally, legally, or constitutionally to do it. Here's what James Madison said, 1794. I cannot undertake to lay my finger on that article of the Constitution which granted to Congress of expending on objects of benevolence the money of their constituents. So James Madison, this is one of the guys that wrote the thing. He wrote the Constitution. He says, I cannot find anywhere. I've run my finger through the entire, there's no place in there that authorizes the Congress of the United States to take money from its constituents and spend it on objects of benevolence. That's charity, that's welfare. Cannot be done. It's unconstitutional. And so that, and you realize 1794, that means already, the Constitution, the ink was barely dry. 5 years since it had been amended by the states and completely ratified in the form it is today with the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. So within 5 to 7 years, that provision had been challenged. And James Madison was there, somebody who knew what the Constitution provided for, to say no. So realize that when you have welfare programs, what happens is that to fund a welfare program, you have to first of all take that money out of some productive part of the economy. It has to come from somewhere, and you're taking it from parts of the economy that are actually producing jobs and producing wages. Every dollar that you take out of the productive part of the economy to give it to somebody who's not working, every time you do that, that dollar now is gone. That dollar is not available for new jobs, not available for plant expansion, not available for higher wages. So every time you do that, every dollar you take out of the economy to fund welfare slows down the economy, and it further mires the poor in poverty. It gives them even fewer and fewer opportunities to climb out of the hole that they find themselves in. And Marvin Olasky's got a great book called The Tragedy of American Compassion. And the tragedy of American compassion, in one phrase, is the tragedy of American compassion is when government took over the role of compassion in society. Marvin Olasky said, basically up until the beginning of the last century, and really up until the mid-1930s with the Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration, up to that point, it was the church and private charity that ran all of the social programs in the country. If people had some kind of a need, financial need or other need, the last place in the world they thought of going was to the government. Everybody knew and everybody understood that's not the place you go for that kind of help. The place you go is to private charities. You go to churches. You know, every church I've ever been a part of, we ran a food bank. We had a fellowship fund where we had resources available to help people pay the rent if they lost a job, to help them take care of their energy bills if they got behind. We had food bank if there were families that went hungry, you know, and we stocked boxes of food with staples. You know, it didn't have Coca-Cola in it, and it didn't have ding-dongs and Hostess Twinkies. We made sure that they got staples that they needed to feed themselves and their families. So they came and they could walk out, no cost to them, because the generous people in our church bodies provided that for them. And private charities would arise to take care of these needs. And that's what happened in America. And they did a far better job. I got a story in the stack today about one physician in Florida bilked Medicare, which is a government-run program. It's not welfare because people pay, they pay taxes for Medicare, so they're just getting a service that they've paid for. But my point is it's run by the government, opens up tremendous fraud, and one doctor bilked Medicare out of $100 million. $462-some million they caught these physicians in southern Florida, the total amount that they bilked taxpayers, over $400 million. So when you have a government-run program, you have all sorts of fraud. Now, trust me, in private charities, especially if they're small, you don't have the opportunity for fraud at that level. I mean, it gets noticed, it gets caught, you make every penny count. Talking here with Steve Tiber, 8 Days of Hope yesterday. You know, when they go into a community to help rebuild houses, I will guarantee you that they make every penny count. They stretch. These are precious dollars that they're working with that have been donated from people that are hardworking and they're already paying their taxes. A lot of it is sacrificial giving, and they are going to make absolutely sure that they get the biggest bang for the buck that they can. Not even a hint or a suspicion of fraud. It's just not going to happen when charity is in private hands and small. Now, you get these really big charities, you know, like the Red Cross and others like that get a lot of government money. That's where a lot of their money comes from, is from the government. And when that happens, you get enormous capacity for fraud, waste, and abuse. So I believe we need to get charity back in the hands of families. You know, Marvin Olasky said what charities would do, what churches would do, private charities would do, when somebody would come to them with a need, the first question they would ask is, who is obligated to help? And whoever it was, it'd start with family. Who is obligated to help? And then they would approach that family member and ask them to assume their obligation to provide help. And if the family had a good reason why they didn't provide help, hey, we've tried to help this guy for years and years and years. He just snorts it up his nose, or he blows it on this, or he blows it on gambling, he blows it on booze. Then the private charity is going to say, look, I don't think we're going to be able to help you. You know, you've already exhausted the charity of your family, and we're just going to enable you. If we give you money, we're just going to enable you to continue a lifestyle which is self-destructive. I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to help you. It's for your own benefit that we're not going to be able to do it. So there was some kind of personal attention. You know, I know the rescue mission in Boise, Idaho. I worked with them for years. Great guy running that thing today, Bill Roscoe. And they've got a program. They don't want to just give these people a place to sleep and food. They want to help them get back on their feet. They've got an entire job training program. They disciple them. They're in the Word. And their whole purpose is to turn these guys' lives around so they can go out and get jobs, so they can now provide generous gifts to the rescue mission to help people coming along behind them. And that's the direction that we've got to go. Well, let's go to Paul in Wilmington, North Carolina. If we can bring Paul in Wilmington, North Carolina. Paul, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Brian, so much for taking my call.
You bet.
Just have prayer for your wife.
Thank you very much.
Has a speedy recovery. Thank you so much for the work that you do for AFR, being a voice of truth and taking that bold stand. I didn't call to talk about benevolence, but since you mentioned it, I used to be part of benevolence ministry at our church, and that kind of physical responsibility that we have in the church. You know, talking about the efficiency. It truly is. There's accountability on every level, and we would bring people in, just like you said, if they had issues with drugs, we would offer them, rehabilitation there, get them in a recovery program, help them any way they could. But there was always that accountability that you don't have there in the government.
Yeah.
And the wasteful spending.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thank you guys for what y'all do, and I know y'all do a lot with. You just had the Share-a-thon there, and I think you guys put it to work so effectively.
Well, thank you.
I was really calling about the Muslim issue. I don't know if you're familiar with General Jerry Boykin.
Oh, yeah. Jerry Boykin's been a frequent guest on this program.
Yeah, I thought I had heard him on here before, but I got an opportunity to meet him a couple of times. He's from North Carolina, and he had appeared at a church, one of the churches we were attending, and a great man. And he's been talking about the Muslim Brotherhood for years before people ever heard of them.
Yes.
And I got an opportunity. I watched a prophecy conference from Greg Laurie's church that he had, and he spoke there, and he talked about the book Muslim Mafia. I don't know if you're familiar with that book.
Yes.
And it talks about the documents that were found, the Muslim Brotherhood's plan to take over, the government basically from within. And I think they're well on the way to doing that. And like you said about the video, it doesn't take much research to find out the true origins of Islam. And so many people, even Christians I talk to, are very confused, and they think that we worship the same God. And, I try to speak truth to them as much as I can. Men like General Boykin that were silenced by the media, and then even the Bush administration come down on him. Very, very sad. But America needs to wake up. We're praying every day for revival, and you guys are doing a great job, the stuff you do. I really appreciate that. We'll continue to pray for you guys.
All right. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that very, very much. And speaking of the Islam issue, that guy, that Hassan guy that killed 14, I include the unborn baby, killed 14 soldiers at Fort Hood, he still hasn't been forced to shave his beard. I mean, this just shows you how weak and impotent America has become, that the military cannot even bring itself to strap that guy to a chair and shave his beard. He's in violation of military regulations, and we're letting him get away with it. And a judge can't even bring himself, look, tie the guy down and shave his beard so we can try him for killing 14 soldiers. I mean, it's just kind of absurd, the weakness and impotence. And I predict that the next wave of jihadism is going to be forest fires in the U.S. Europe has had just a ton of forest fires, deadly forest fires, set by Muslims in places like Portugal and Spain and Russia. And that's going to be the next form of jihad right here in the United States. Focal Point, AFR Talk.